And we are live, and you can begin whenever you want to, boss.
Yeah. Let me open the meeting a little early because we have three speakers before we start. And I'll just announce that welcome to the regular annual monthly, not annual, monthly meeting of the Prospect City Council. And today is September 19th, 2022. And the first speaker at the microphone will be Scott Reed, who is our Metro Council. Scott?
Hello, everyone.
You use the podium and the mic,
Oh,
or at least use the mic.
thank you. Thanks, everyone. How's everyone? Hi. I'm Scott Reed, Metro Councilman, 16th District. I don't believe I've met you yet.
The old dog.
I'm Scott. Good to see you. And I don't believe I know I've met you. John, I don't think I've met you.
Haven't met you yet.
Yeah, good to see you.
Good to see
Are
you.
you both recently elected or?
Appointed about a year ago.
Okay.
As clerk.
I'm filling a vacancy.
Okay. Good to see you. I appreciate you allowing me to come in. Every now and then I like to come in and just give you the state of the, I guess, the state of the state as it were. It's been a while since I've been here, actually. But I appreciate it very much. The city of Prospect has been very good to me, and it's been a pleasure representing this area. I was telling somebody just the other day that I'm not sure, Mayor, when this article came out, but I guess it was 4 or 5 years ago, there was an article that came out that said that this was one of the most desirable places in the country to live. Something to that effect. And I tell people all the time that it is. And again, I'm very proud to be your representative.
One of the three safest cities in Kentucky.
Yes. This was somebody that had just moved into Hunting Creek in the estate section. So I told her that. I said, don't leave, they like here. Just a few things. I wanted to talk a little bit about what we did in the budget this year. Every year we go through the budget process, and it wrapped up in June. This was the second year that I actually was not on the budget committee. Every other year I've been on the budget committee. But this year I was not, but I still followed it closely. We are having issues within the city, as you know, with hiring and retaining police officers. Metro Louisville at the moment is down some 100 police officers. At one time we were down some 200 police officers, so we're starting to make some progress. The council, along with the we approved, and now I think from a pay standpoint, are commensurate with other cities. The way that it had been in previous years is that we would have our trainees go through the class, and then you would have peer cities, and in some cases suburban cities, come in and hire them away for better pay and better benefits. But I think now we're in a situation where we're competitive with Indianapolis and Cincinnati, et cetera. So it's getting better. Is it where we need to be? No. But as long as I'm on Metro Council, I will always push for very strong public safety. I think that's the number one responsibility of local government. Also, to that end, with regard to funding the police, we are also spending quite a lot of money on paving this year. I don't know if you knew this or not, but prior to, I would say 2015, 2016, our roads were in terrible shape. I mean, it's horrendous shape. And some of us on the Republican side, I'm not trying to be partisan here, but I'm a Republican. On the Republican side, I push very strongly for infrastructure and getting roads back to where we feel like they need to be. This year, we got $30 million in for paving, and that's why you're seeing so much road work that's being done. I thought that was a major victory. People ask me all the time, why are you guys not more aggressive, et cetera, et cetera. There are 7 Republicans and 19 Democrats, so we have to take our victories where we can get them. And I would say that for the most part, we work very well together. But in this particular case, I felt like getting that kind of funding was important. Everybody's familiar with House Bill 314, right? You know what's going on? Okay. For those that don't know, House Bill 314 will allow for greater annexation and will allow for certain areas to form their own suburban cities with 60% of the population, 60% of the people being petitioned voting for that, okay? This will not take effect until 2024. But I see this as an opportunity for areas that haven't been as well served by metro government, particularly in the South End, to form their own suburban cities to get like what you guys have, which is better trash pickup, maybe in some cases, better police service, et cetera. If they want to have their own police force, whatever. But there is a 2-year period where maybe some changes could be made, but this is going to take effect in 2024. So maybe it's something that the city of Prospect would look at in terms of areas that you might want to, for lack of a better term, annex. I know that the mayor and I have talked about this in the past. But now with 60% of the people that are signing up for this, it does not have to come through Metro Council, whereas in the past, it would go through Metro Council, and there are some people on the council that even though if you talk specifics and say, okay, you'll get better, you know, you're going to lose a little tax revenue, but at the same time, you're not going to have to cover them from a fire standpoint or police standpoint. There are people that really don't like this on the council. I would tell you that right now. They don't like it at all. I happen to think that if a particular area hasn't been well served by metro government, that they should have the right to form their own certain cities and get better services if they want to pay for it, because they're still paying property taxes and they're still going to pay their insurance tax. But if they want to pay extra, let them pay extra. So that again isn't going to take effect until 2024, and that gives some room for negotiation. There are a couple of things that are going on in the area. One thing is the Zadi property on River Road that I know Don's been involved in. I want you to know that I'm watching this, okay? And so far, I haven't really seen anything from them that makes me think that they want to comply with our regulations. They have not submitted a development plan yet. They have to do that. It has been zoned for what they are intending to do, but my understanding is that there may be some opportunity to add some binding elements. So I'm staying on top of it. Don, thank you for keeping me involved and being the reporter on the Johnny on the spot.
Thank you for responding.
Well, no problem.
It's been great.
They have not, again, they've not submitted a development plan yet. They have been issued a cease and desist 2 times. And the last communication that I had with the county attorney's office and with planning and design was that when you send somebody out there next time, I want to go. So I want to talk to them. You know, to this point, it seems as though whatever they've done hasn't worked. What they're saying is that we're just doing cosmetic things to the building. We're prepping it for sale or whatever. Yeah, okay. Anyway, that's that. And I know everybody is familiar with what's going on with Prospect Cove, just to give you a little bit of background. And I really can't comment on the current zoning case, but I will tell you that after the prior case was defeated, the developer had 2 years to come back with a new plan, which they've done. So there is a public hearing on said date.
September 18th, October 18th.
October, yes, and I do not know the time. You have the same case manager, I believe is.
I was going to just send my comment, 6:30 in the evening at KCB on October 18th.
Okay, all right. I did not know the time. I just knew the date. You had the same, I think, case manager as last time. And, you know, I would encourage anybody that wants to comment on this to go. So with that, again, I don't want to take too much of your time, but I'm happy to answer any questions you might have.
Why did they put off 314 until the middle of 2024? You said they wanted to have time to negotiate.
Well, it's, I think it was the state legislature's, I think it was their goal to allow any pending cases to come to Metro Council and kind of get those off the table or something to that effect, and then move forward with a clean slate. I can't answer it completely. That's my guess. That was sort of a compromise. But 2024 is a firm date.
I went to the last meeting, which was the second meeting of the review commission. And I think they are trying hard to get participation from all the very different, diverse people that are sitting there. My only concern was, as a suburban city person, there's only one representative out of that huge group. And they're breaking that down now into subcommittees. And that person, in my mind, Bonnie Jung, who represents JCLC, she, in order to get complete representation of suburban cities, she's going to have to go to all of the subcommittee meetings. If she's just sitting on one, then there's there's something not happening in the other side. So, but the words from everybody, I thought, were very productive.
Good. Did you go to was the meeting?
I
go
actually was the
Monday?
only person in the audience at the meeting on Friday.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah. Maybe we can talk offline about it.
I probably wouldn't say much more than I just did.
Okay. Okay. So anyway, I see that as a positive. Yeah, I see that as something that certain areas that have not been represented well. Again, particularly in the South End, I think the South End has sort of gotten the short end of the stick when it comes to city services. And another thing, I think that this is going to bring in more transparency by making the urban service district budget spending known. I wrote this down. And by adding more reporting requirements for contracts, by making it easier to remove a member of the government for improper or illegal actions. And another thing, the current mayor term is 3 years or 3 terms. Now it's going to be 2 terms. Same with the governor. So
So there are locations in the east end that I think, in my opinion, really need to incorporate.
right.
One is Norton Commons. Know whether they want to or not, they really should. Because if you look at the crime statistics, they're all around us. Not here, but Norton Commons, Oakland County, because they don't have they're not incorporated, they're not police.
I agree. I agree. And I have spoken to a few people there that have approached me about it. And I think there is some interest.
I think there is. Lake Forest is actually
Yeah,
moving.
that was the other one I was.
They are definitely, they'll be ready without question. One of the difficulties in the area you mentioned is there tends not to be a cohesive organization of some of the people who are most affected by not getting Metro services. And that's going to take a while.
Well, they've got 2 years. So you know,
Exactly.
I think now's the time to be thinking about it. Did you have a question, Frank?
Yeah, what is the current funding for the affordable housing? The Metro?
What did we
What-
fund? It's 10 million,
It's 10
$10
million.
million.
I thought that was doubled here recently.
Not to my knowledge. I mean, they may have gotten some ARP funding or something like that, but that's $10 million.
Do they maintain that? Do they maintain that fund at a certain level? They keep.
Oh, no, okay, let me backtrack just for a second to that point. There was $30 million that was part of the ARP funding that is going toward homeless housing for up to 30% of AMI. So that may be what you're thinking about. But the Affordable Housing Trust Fund itself is the same funding as it had been.
Well, of course, I'm referring to what you can't refer to down the road here. That fund existed before the ARPA things.
Correct.
And that's the 10 million.
Yes,
Yeah, okay.
right. And by the way, that's all.
Do you know, or can I find out where that $10 million goes?
Sure. Yeah, we get record of that. So if you need that, I can get it too.
I think I do need that.
Okay. By the way, that's bonded money. So
I know that makes no sense at all.
So we basically borrow it to give it away.
Yeah.
How do you ever pay the bonds back, just as you're paying bonds, right? There's no
There's
specific.
well, that's a good question. And it's one of the things that I asked when I got on the council. You know, at what point do we know if what we're doing is considered financially healthy? And I'm told every time that we bond a certain, up to a certain percentage where it's seen, where it's deemed accessible or acceptable by certain city guidelines or something to that effect. But then I start thinking, because I think sometimes in simplistic terms, why are we borrowing money to give it away? You know, there's got to be $10 million in the budget somewhere, right?
So you can tell me who they give it to.
Yes, absolutely can. And I'll ask Debbie to get that information for you. Public record. Any questions, Andrew? Okay. Any else?
Well, Scott, again, the people in Smithfield Green really appreciate your help. The Oddie family has not been forthright in terms of what's going to happen there, nor is their leasing. There's been probably a third of an acre of trees, small trees taken down, probably 6,000 square feet of concrete poured and a retaining wall put up, all without a permit. And everybody's kind of curious as how you do that.
Well, I am
thought
too.
that was stuff that needed
I don't know
a
if you saw
permit.
it. I was getting a little indignant in the last email that I wrote because they've been given 2 cease and desist orders, and it just seems like that's not doing any good at all.
Right.
So when they get out there with a code enforcement officer next time, I hope to be there with them.
Thank you. Appreciate your help.
Thanks, everybody. Yeah.
Thank you.
Thank
you.
Nice to meet you.
Good to see you. Thank you.
Nice to meet you. Mayor? I told her since I was on here, it comes.
It's got good.
See you maybe with it.
Thanks.
Take care.
Mr. Easley, would you like to speak for 2 or 3 minutes? Mr. Easley is well, he'll tell you.
Yeah, my name is Brian Easley. I know some of you don't know me. I am the Democratic write-in candidate for Kentucky State Senate District 6, this new District 6 that we're in now. I'm a Harrods Creek resident, but I'm a Prospect area guy. Our kids have been in daycare here. My 2-year-old is still in daycare here. I drive by this place every single day, twice a day. So, but I've been here. We moved here at the end of 2015. My wife is from this area. She was the deputy. We were in DC. She was chosen as deputy chief of staff for Governor-elect Bevin back in 15. And so we moved here at the end of 15 and I got into the family business, restaurant and real estate. So my company was called Druthers. We built this Dairy Queen over here way back in the day. So I'm the vice president of Druthers. I don't know if some of y'all knew Bob Gatewood. He was the president out of Harmony for a while. But I showed up in May to the primaries and wasn't a Democrat in the race for the state senate. So that was an issue for me. But and I was kind of backing Furco and it didn't work out for him. So I felt the Liberty nominee was unacceptable. So I started making phone calls and I threw my hat in the ring. I'm a moderate, I'm a wounded warrior, I'm a businessman, father of 3. I figured if anybody could pull it off, it'd be me. Yeah, so it's been an interesting experience so far. I'm new to politics. I'm not unfamiliar with it because, of course, my life, and I dealt with that for so long. But I was always nonpartisan, bipartisan my whole life. I was in the military. I was in government. I'm from Texas. My family is all Republicans, so I'm used to it. I'm used to. I work across the aisle every single day, is what I tell people. We have 3 small children. We're looking to stay here for the long run. I just finished my MBA at the University of Louisville for my little pandemic project. So I would be kind of the business and veteran kind of candidate. That's kind of what I'm running on. But I just wanted to introduce myself to all of you. I'm not going to take up all your time, but if you ever need to get a hold of me, I'm looking to work with everybody. I don't care who you voted for. I don't care what party you're in. This is Kentucky. That's the way it should be. That's the way it's always been, as I can see from the council here. Anyway, you can always reach out to me. I'll make my contact information available. If I am elected, I'll be the Prospect senator. So I will first and foremost represent this area. But now this new district has Trimble, all of Oldham County, and then a few swaths of Jefferson County. So it's a lot of ground to cover. And I will keep an office here in Prospect when I'm not running back and forth to Frankfurt. So if you have any questions for me, shoot. Otherwise, I'll get out of your hair and let me know.
Any questions for Mr.
Did you say you're running on the Democrat ticket?
Yes. Yes, I am. Yes, I am. Okay, anybody else? Anybody? All right,
That's okay. Thank you. Republican.
It's a lot of that going around.
No, but I've had just as many Republicans supporting me as Democrats, I feel. Jim Zimmerman is a former rep from LaGrange. He's in my corner. I have several other Republicans that I'm working with, and I hope to form an advisory committee of sorts, with prominent leaders, Democrat and Republican and independent, in our kind of 3-county area, to work with me and keep me appraised of all the concerns and issues going on. And I just want to serve the people and help out. That's all I want to do. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thank you.
We had one more, but apparently she's not here, so we'll just start with the regular agenda. And the first item on our agenda is to consider approving the minutes as submitted by of the city council meeting of August 15th. And those have already been distributed. Are there any suggestions for corrections or additions? Hearing none, I'll ask for a motion.
So moved.
Mr. Hewlett moves approval. Is there a second?
Second.
Moving to second. All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
All opposed. The ayes have it. The minutes are approved. Okay, the next item on our agenda is my update on city matters, and I have quite a few. First was referred to briefly, the Metro Planning Commission hearing on LDG's proposed apartment development known as Prospect Cove, which has been weighing on us since 2016 when it was defeated in 2017, has now come back as they are entitled to do. And it is now scheduled for a hearing before the Metro Planning Commission on Tuesday, October 18th at 6:30 in the evening in the auditorium at Kentucky Country Day. The address is 4100 Springdale Road. We're working with attorneys Gregory Potts and Chris Warman to get ready. And this hearing is when the factual record will be made. And the facts made in that record, and only those facts, will be the basis for what the Metro Council may consider when the matter comes before them after the Planning Commission is done. It's also the basis for only the facts made at the Planning Commission hearing may be used when there is any subsequent litigation, which there is likely to be no matter what the Metro Council does. There are petitions in opposition to the proposed development on the table in the foyer. We're beginning to gather names. We could use some more. So if you're opposed to this project, please sign the petition that's on the table in the foyer. 2.
Before you go on, what are we doing to notify people about that meeting?
Well, we just received the date and time and place within the last very few days, but we will be putting out an e-blast to the community.
Okay, I would
Telling
like to
everybody about
suggest that that isn't enough. We did an awful lot more than that last time. And I think at the very least, we need to use our neighborhood watch because it reaches a much broader group of people. The other thing was that there were people.
I don't know about this neighborhood watch.
Next door.
Yes. No, not next door. When there's a stopped thing on 42, we have neighborhood watch in addition. Right, but we have other ones throughout the city. Right.
Well, Sandra, why don't you and I talk about this after the meeting and see what we can do? along the lines you
because-
suggest.
The other thing is the petitions needed to go in. The one that wanted the move to the night meeting.
It's already accomplished.
I know, because there are people here at this table who took them around the city. Linda Creech, for example, in Sutherland was monumental. And we turned in over 400 names so that we could get it moved. It required 300. We turned in 400. In addition to that, we have turned in hundreds saying that the thing is too big for us. And I think that we need not only to send out blasts, I think we need to be proactive if we're looking at people coming to that meeting.
Is it appropriate to use the tax rolls to send a letter? I mean, that's the most comprehensive roll call we have of residents, isn't it?
Yeah.
I think we should look into that anyway, because the e-blast covers only those folks who have enrolled in it. Isn't that correct? So, a more universal approach to that might be the tax rates, if we can use them.
I don't see why not.
Yeah. Okay, thank you.
My second point was going to be to tell everybody about the Otter Nursery. Apparently it's been leased, and the lessee apparently has plans to have a sports bar with a series of pickleball courts behind it. It appears that they have not done the necessary paperwork and permitting, and Don Gibson and Scott Reed are all over this. So they would be the best ones to answer any more questions about it. You've already heard Scott speak to it. Don, do you have anything to add?
No, I think we covered it pretty well. There just hasn't been clarity in terms of what the leasing wants to do with the property. Pickleball is a fast growing sport. It's a fun sport. Grandparents can beat their children sometimes and grandchildren. And so it's a great sport, but it's also a very noisy sport. And there was an article in Axis about that. It said the pickleball pickle. And and for instance, in Punta Gorda, Florida, city council is trying to arbitrate something between residents and in the city because they have pickleball courts across from condominiums. And there's been some decibel readings of like 77. And according to the article, a quiet neighborhood's like 40 and jackhammer's like 90. So it's pretty loud. And the basis of it is a plastic ball being hit with a wooden mallet, but it's a heck of a lot of fun. And along with that comes a lot of cheering and music and this, that, and the other. So it's a lot of fun, but I'm not sure it's appropriate for where they're wanting to put it.
Don, how close is it to your community?
Excuse me?
How close to
How
your
close
community?
is it?
The property line is like about 40 feet from a master bedrooms. If you're familiar with the Audi, they had a property, they had a retail nursery in front and they had a storage building where they mulch and sucker. Well, they're changing that into use for something, and then they're going to have pickleball courts around it. And again, we don't know that there's a couple of our residents have been back talking to the construction people, and they're saying, hey, 16 pickleball courts. And they want a pool room and a bar. And it's just, and again, the building is 20 feet from our property line and 50 feet from the bedroom. But all of this is here. What we really need to know is there specific plans, and hopefully they'll be forthcoming with them. Questions? Yes. Excuse me? Yeah, you couldn't hear me?
Can you hear this?
I think they're amplified.
The green light's on.
Next subject, you may have noticed the work being done in and around City Hall parking lot. It is ongoing right now. The tight curve near the dumpster has been widened. The retaining wall has been moved back and rebuilt. The dumpster is being moved to the other side, still in the rear. The concrete base for it was poured today. The repaving of it will be done last within a few weeks, at the same time that the paving of the parking lot expansion is being done. The parking lot expansion is part of the Little Hunting Creek project. Parking lot improvements and repaving around City Hall are not. Next. Ron has arranged for the repair of the City Hall cupola. That's how you say it. Starting with the removal of the cupola and the repair of the roof around it. And Ron tells me this will happen towards the end of October. Next, you may have noticed the new door and door frame right there that we recently had constructed. Next, the November 8th elections are fast approaching. And I just want to say a few things about yard signs. Prospect allows yard signs to be put up 30 days before the election. That is starting on November 9th. Be aware that some of our neighborhoods have their own rules. Innisbrook, for instance, does not allow yard signs at all. Sutherland has a rule that it may be there only 14 days before the election. The estates of Hunting Creek has a restriction. I'm informed that the restriction is 1 week before the election. I believe the estates of the landings doesn't allow them at all, and the rest of the landings does without restriction. And finally, they can't be placed on any city property. So those are the rules. Finally, Hunting Creek Drive between Withville Circle and Foxcroft Road is now closed. And this is to allow MSD to replace the culvert that runs under that road. This work began today, and this closure began today. It's expected to last for a month and a half, we're told. The culvert being replaced is about 50 years old, and it's in bad shape. The cost, which I understand is about $500,000, is being paid entirely by MSD. During this closure, we'll be redoing paver section of the estate of the paver section of the exit from Hunting Creek, which many of us have noticed needs redoing. So that's a factor.
John, excuse me.
Yes, sir.
Just earlier, Ron told me that the current detour, little right entrance and exit is going to be modified because they can't pour the concrete until after the culvert work is finished. So
they couldn't do it until after.
Because of the heavy equipment.
I knew we were going to be delayed.
Egress.
I didn't know it was going to.
So I think there might be a change in that routine around exit entrance to Honey Creek.
I was off to run by. One last thing, might be interesting for you to know that the playground was put up entirely by community volunteers. Last Saturday, there were about 20 of them down there under the supervision of the American company that sold us the equipment and Don Covett and his people. So, just like to know that. Other than that, there's not much going on. So we'll move into the rest of the agenda. Commission and board reports says none. Other reports, US 42 safety study. Is there someone here to give a report on that?
No, John, there isn't, but the only thing to report tonight is that we do expect some new information very soon. Otherwise, it's the same as the report given last month. Thank you.
And a report on the library, Sandra.
The library is the same as last time too. We're getting ready for our used book sale, which is the weekend before Halloween.
Jeff Sherrod for the police report.
You undercover tonight, Pete?
Yeah, well, I wish. Before I get into the police report, I just want to make a comment or two. Last Saturday, Rick Wilson and I represented the police department as volunteers to assist on the playground project. But I would like to commend Ron Cundiff and his staff, Rusty and Brian, for the hard work that they put in on that Saturday. And I don't know if everybody here knows what all went into that, but those guys were here at 7:30 in the morning and they lugged that entire pallet of concrete in and out of those holes and concrete mixers for the entire day and didn't leave here till 5:30 that afternoon. And they were literally covered in concrete and concrete dust. And they worked their butts off, and they should be commended for the amount of effort and everything that they put in, along with the other volunteers. I mean, it was a back-breaking project, and it was nice to work with those guys from that company. I think Miracle is the name of it, and those guys were very good. They gave very clear, concise instructions to the people that were working there. And you always felt really safe in what you were doing. You always knew exactly what you were supposed to do. There was no, willy-nilly instructions or whatever. Everybody was put on different teams, and it was very well-run operation. And that's a testament to Ron and I don't remember the other guy's name, them getting together and formulating a plan, and it worked very well. And I would just like to make that comment about Ron and his staff. They were great. Now on to the police report. Pretty slow month for us. Actually, the house checks were down, which is unusual for us. They were down to about 1,500 compared to 1970 the same time last year. I don't really know what the cause of that was, but they were just down. Other than that, the reports and stuff, nothing really stands out. Officer initiated runs were up nearly 100 over the previous year. That's just where officers get out on their own and do just their own activities, like at night. In particular, late shift, one of the officers, when he spots garage doors that are open, driving around at 3 o'clock in the morning, if he sees the garage doors open, he lets the homeowner know your garage door's open. He probably finds 5 or 6 of those at night, but he lets them know. So he's actually got a notice that he drops off on them. So they're aware of that. So that's a pretty good service to provide. And it also, you hope to clean up on just thefts that would occur if somebody just goes in an unlocked garage, because quite honestly, then you have access to somebody's house if you've got access to the garage. Let's see.
Chief, I got one of those notices about a year back.
Did you learn?
I did.
Actually,
Now there's a double check.
Yeah, well, that's
actually,
good.
this last weekend, you did one of my neighbors across the
Yeah.
street, and they had their child, they were on vacation, had their child come over the next morning, first thing.
Yeah,
So it works.
yeah, well, good.
Yeah.
With regard to the reports, there were 3 felony reports listed. The one for the ID theft, as it turned out, there was just the use of a social security number, but they believe it was just an aberration because no one ever attempted to file any type of credit cards or whatever. The there was probably a transposing of a social security number on someone else applying for something under the wrong name, and it just kicked up an alert. They checked into it. There was no actual fraud attempt, so that case was actually closed out as unfounded. The one burglary we had was quite unusual because there was no signs of any forced entry. The homeowner thought that they had access through a window. However, the window was not broken out. There was a screen over it. So if somebody went through that location, they put the screen back, which seems a little unusual, but it is quite possible. And house wasn't ransacked. There was just some items taken from a small fire safe. And that was it. That was the extent of it. But they had a vendor come through the home on a moving thing about 6 weeks before. So there is a possibility that somebody was aware of this little safe and could have accessed it. So, and then the theft by deception, that was a contractor that took a significant amount of money for a deposit on a large project and never did anything. So that's not really the typical case that we run into is somebody hires a contractor, they pay him some money, and they're just not satisfied with work. So then that becomes a civil issue. This one is strictly a criminal issue because in this case, the contractor actually took all the money to go out and buy supplies and then is in the wind and is now residing in Florida, but has an outstanding arrest warrant in Kentucky because of their actions here. We took a warrant for him. And I think that's it. Does anybody have any questions?
Yeah, Chief.
Yeah.
On the social network, we see all kinds of criminal activity over in North Commons. What is your opinion of why that occurs there?
There's a lot of activity. There's a lot of construction going on. Typically, when you have a lot of widespread construction, apartments, things like that, you have a lot of theft with regards to construction supplies, things like that. And quite honestly, I was told, now I don't know this to be fact, that they have Section 8 housing going up there, apartments in close proximity to the other. As a matter of fact, my wife's uncle called me the other day. He lives in the retirement community that's over there, and he told me he was concerned about safety. And that's a new, they've only lived there 6 months. It's brand new. I mean, this guy moved from Paramount Estates, one of the really nice homes out there, and he's moved to this retirement community, and he's been there 6 months, and now he's concerned about safety because of the people that he's seen walking around in pretty close proximity to his retirement home. So he says they look sketchy. Now, his version of sketchy and mine are different. He's like 91. So. But they have an awful lot of like thefts from cars and things like that as well. Now, in terms of like serious, what we would call Part 1 crimes, like robberies, sex offenses, assaults, I haven't seen those being reported there.
Okay, thank you.
You're welcome.
Is that it?
Yes, sir.
Thank you. Under unfinished business, there is nothing on the agenda. Under new business, there is discussion of U.S. Treasury guidelines on the use and reporting of American Rescue Act planned funds. So who would like to discuss that? John, would you like to start?
Right.
I think we just wanted to address any questions that council had about our current plan of spending the ARPA funds towards wages and reporting it as such. I did distribute the final guidelines, so I didn't know if there were questions that I can answer related to that.
Well, and just let me say that prior to the final ruling, I researched because kept a basically said, go back to the city attorney and, whatever he or she thinks. And then they come up with the final rule and they really made it simple. And it is, John has, I think, given you all a copy. If you just put it in wages, then there's no question. So that's the federal government.
How do we put it in wages? You can't just write down the word wages. I mean, what specifically are we doing?
You'll identify the period and the wages that you're going to apply it towards it and report it and then give the supporting, like an ADP report to support the report that we give to the feds.
Okay, what are we really spending the money on?
Well, that's what we're really spending the ARPA money on.
How much did we get?
In 2 years, we got 1.3 million. And the police salaries leaked that.
My impression, it was beyond our normal expenditure for wages and salaries. Are you saying that it's taking the place of our normal expenditure for wages and salary?
Well, no, we're spending the same amount, but we're just using ARPA money to do it. And then what we normally otherwise out of the general budget would spend on police is available to spend on other things according to whatever the council does with the budget.
Okay, most other suburban cities that I've talked to have spent the money on some kind of a project that they needed, that they wanted to do, that they didn't have the money for, but also that didn't have an ongoing, continuing financial drain on their normal resources. How do we get to the point where we can figure out going forward what the ARPA money may have been spent on since we're reporting it as wages? In other words, when I look at, for example, the playground, is the playground, what does that cost more than ARPA money? Are there continuing obligations we'll have in the future?
I'm not sure I understand your question.
Money spent on the playground is budgeted by the council.
No, I'm keenly aware of that, but by the same token, when we look at how we build the budgets in the future, what have we done since our wages are now going to be ARPA money? What have we done in the future that we're going to have to take care of in the budget?
Well, we need to have a budget. If we're going to do anything in the future. We don't have one right now.
And part of that is because we don't have a handle completely on, you said at the thing with the chamber, that essentially the playground is what we were doing with ARPA money.
No, that's not at all what I said.
Okay.
That's a complete misrepresentation
Okay,
of what I
then
said.
go ahead and
I don't have anything else to say.
okay.
I think we got a budget. The mayor's following the budget and we're spending city funds accordingly. The council approved the budget.
I'm keenly aware of that.
Well, how much are we spending on the playground compared to the ARPA money? What is the budget for the playground? Where do we stand on the playground?
Answer to that is the playground costs $100,000 total. Soup to nuts.
The playground cost $100,000?
Yes. That came straight out of the budget, straight out of last year's budget. Last year's budget appropriated $480,000 for parks, and $100,000 of that was used to pay for the playground.
Interesting.
I want to thank, can you hear me okay, everyone? I want to thank John Carter for sending that document out. For those of you who may not know it, that was a huge document. I don't know, 400 pages or something. But I did attempt to go through that painstakingly as best as I could. So I'm just going to try to be as honest as I can be. I don't care where we spend the money. I mean, I do, but I don't care if it's for wages or something else. But I don't want to take the risk of that being called back. And when I read through the document, I don't see wages identified as an authorized use of the funds. I see a lot of other things. And so I'm just concerned about that. I would rather err on the side of caution and spend the money on something that I know the document approves.
So the approval is of government services. And I don't think there's any question that our wages we pay our police and our other employees are government services. So it seems to me we're in complete compliance with the ARPA guidelines.
I think what happened is you had, from what I picked up, from people in various offices, is that you had nationwide a outcry by small cities. This is too complicated, we can't deal with this. And so they said, well, let's make it simple, stupid. And so that's what they did. And so we can do it this way. And it's the easy way to do it. And we know it's legal. We know there's nobody that's going to come behind it and say you're responsible for X, Y, Z.
Thank you, Chris. So let me build on that a little bit. So does that mean, I thought the government services had to be something related to COVID. In other words, some kind of suffering that they had. Are you saying that that is not the case now?
They're saying they're assuming anything under $10 million is for COVID related expenses. They're assuming that. You don't have to prove it.
Yeah, that's it.
They did that. They did that to make it simple and solve our problem, along with 5,000, 10,000, other small cities. That's why they did it.
Well, there's no question. It says that in the summary, but and I don't disagree with you, but it seems to stretch credibility that, you know, in that first paragraph, first page, whatever that is stated, then they go, even in the summary, you go 47 pages of explaining what you can't do. I mean, maybe that's the federal government at work for their tax dollars. It makes some sort of convoluted sense that.
John Carter, John, I recall 3 or 4 months ago, we approved a contract with KIPTA. It was about 1% of total ARP money. And one of the reasons we engaged in that was to ensure our compliance, not only in total in the macro, but also in reporting. Is KIPTA in alignment with this? Does KIPTA
Yes,
agree?
that advice actually came from KIPTA as a suggestion. As far as using it towards wages to avoid the procurement rules and all the headaches that might present itself if we tried to apply it towards anything that we contracted. So correct. The one thing I'll address with Frank and the limitations that you cite and some of those regulations, there's 2 different options that governments can take. And we're taking option 1 that allows us to do the government services. I think you're looking at the option 2. There's a whole lot more regs to it, the bigger 6. They are held to a stricter guidelines. But I'll just refer to the page 9 and 11 of the documents I sent you. I mean, what we're talking about is spending on government services here, and it says any service traditionally provided by a government, and listed under here is general government administration, staff, and administrative facilities.
I have no problem. I have no problem with that. But I think Don makes an excellent point. Do we have hard copy opinion from KIPTA because we're paying for that? I think that's the basis of your question, isn't it, Don?
I don't have a hard copy, no.
But that's the advice they provided.
That is the advice I provided.
Would they give us a hard copy that we can keep in our records?
I can, I'm sure they will, but they'll probably at the very end say, refer to your city attorney. It's typically what they do, so. But yeah, I'll ask them that.
I really appreciate this discussion. It's a wonderful problem to have for an entity to give you 1.2 million or $1.3 million. I just want to make sure we don't have to give it back someday. So that's my only concern.
Anything else?
Motion to adjourn.
We have one, excuse me. Sorry to interrupt. We have one citizen wants to.
Sorry.
John Simpson.
I'm John Simpson. I live at 8501 Heritage Bridgeway, and on behalf of my neighbors, I'd like to comment on one aspect of the Highway 42 safety plan. And in the hope that it will enable me to make my remarks a little more concise, I'd like to pass around some printed material that will elaborate on what I'm going to say. I'm going to talk about Part 7A of the safety plan. That's the part that deals with the consultant's proposal to install lighting between Bridgepoint Boulevard and the bridge over Heritage Creek. My neighbors and I have two concerns. I've listed them here as objections, but I think that's a little strong. But we have two concerns, and we have some proposals that we think would be a little more effective. Our first concern is that the lighting proposal doesn't address the safety problem on that stretch of 42. And that's the part of 42 that comes down the hill from Bridgepoint Boulevard down to the bridge. There have been two fatal accidents there in the last 7 years. And as you can see from the news reports that I enclosed in the material I gave you, both of those accidents occurred in broad daylight. And the police concluded it was because both drivers had drifted over the center line, probably because they were speeding and caused head-on collisions. In neither case was road surface lighting an issue, and it's not the solution to the problem. Our second objection is that the style of lighting that the contractor is proposing is what I recall is exactly what we did not want when we were discussing this a few years ago. I went to the briefing at St. Francis in the Field a few weeks ago, and I encountered a very helpful consultant who was standing by the easels where they were displaying illustrations of what was going to happen on that stretch of 42. He explained to me that in order to reduce the number of posts they were going to have to install, they would move the posts farther apart and make the lights higher. And when I asked him if the tree canopy wouldn't interfere with the lighting, he said, oh yes, the tree canopy will have to be substantially pared away, and some of the trees might have to be removed altogether to avoid having to repeatedly trim away the tree canopy. That tree canopy is a very important audio and visual buffer for my community. You may know that I'm going to explain this in a complicated way, and I'll simplify it. The illumination on a surface is the inverse square of the distance from the light source. So to say it more simply, if you double the height of a light pole, you have to increase the intensity of the light 4 times, 2 times 2. And if you triple it, it's 3 times 3. The light source has to be 9 times as bright. That part of the roadway is actually elevated above, it goes up the hill. It's elevated below the ground level in my community. So all of these lights, once the tree canopy is removed, will be very close to us. My entire neighborhood is closer to Highway 42 than any house in any other community in the city. The back of Building 8500, which is where Patricia Hart lives, Mayor, is about 90 feet from Highway 42. That's the distance from home plate to first base on a baseball diamond. That's really close. What the contractors are proposing to do is to put high intensity industrial lighting in a place where it will just bathe our entire community. And we will have no way of blocking it out. And we'll see it year round because, as I say, we are very close to Highway 42. There are some options we think are better, and they're cheaper. They're actually not our recommendations, they're the recommendations of the Federal Highway Administration, and they are in there. There are horizontal chevron signs that can be placed at a curve that point the way around it. They're just chevrons, and they're placed at close intervals all the way around the curve, and they can be highly reflective, so they can be seen in day and night. It's also possible, and I know the contractors address this to some extent, what's called dynamic lighting. What they're proposing is to have dynamic lighting at the exit from Bridgeport Boulevard, so that when a car arrives at the exit and is turning left there onto 42, a light will come on that tells people coming down 42 to look for oncoming traffic coming up from the right. We think it would be entirely feasible to install that sort of dynamic lighting on the curve a little farther down the hill that would notify any car that's going more than 10 miles an hour above the speed limit to slow down by having little LED lights around the chevrons going around the curve. It's also possible, and the contractors have proposed this, to put what are called centerline rumble strips, so that when a car drifts over the line a little bit, and this was the cause of both of those fatal accidents, the driver will be aware that he's drifted out of his lane. These are not high-tech solutions. In fact, the next time you go to Holiday Manor to shop, or to Paul's Market, or to pick up a grandchild at Ballard, come back to Prospect on Route 22, and you'll notice between Seminary Road and Hurstbourne, all along the way, you will see these horizontal chevrons, and you will see the entire distance. The center line is covered with those rumble strips, so that it's almost impossible to drift over it without being aware of it. Lighting is not the problem on 42, and it's not going to be the solution. The problem is excessive speed, especially coming down that hill. Now, I understand that enforcement of the speed limit is a matter that's not within the control of the mayor or the city council. But if you can't deal with that problem, we ask you, please, at least not to do any harm. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thanks very much, John.
Can I make a suggestion?
Read the. Yes, Greg.
I too, thank you very much. I'd like to recommend that this go to the US 42 working group for their full consideration. And I want to thank John very much for presenting this to the council and to the mayor tonight. That's okay with you, John?
Oh, absolutely.
Can Mr. Simpson be invited to the meeting to speak to it?
Yes. Okay.
Sounds my argument. But I think I used to be on that.
You should want her. Yeah. So you'll be there. Thank you.
All right, that completes the agenda. I think Frank was going to make a motion to adjourn.
I still will.
Okay, go ahead.
Motion to adjourn.
Is there a second?
Second.
All in favor?
Aye.
All opposed? We're adjourned.
See if I can get some.
Yeah, good luck, Speaker. I hope so.